You're listening to episode 87 of the Fierce Fatty podcast. We're talking about fatphobia at work. Boo hiss. Let's do it.
Perfect.
I'm Victoria Wellesby, TEDx speaker, best-selling author, and fat activist. I have transformed my life from hating my body with desperately low self-esteem to being a courageous and confident, fierce fatty who loves every inch of this jelly. Society teaches us living in a fat body is bad, but what if we spent less time, money, and energy on the pursuit of thinness and instead focused on the things that actually matter, like if pineapple on pizza should be outlawed, or if the mullet was the greatest haircut of the 20th century. So, how do you stop negative beliefs about your fat body controlling your life? It's the Fierce Fatty podcast. Let's begin. Hello, welcome to this episode, this sweaty episode. It's been a heat wave in Vancouver. I'm currently wearing as little as humanly possible without my tits being completely out. I make a video of the podcast and put it on the internet, and I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate to see my nips, but trying not to. It's been like 40 degrees in Vancouver for those who use Fahrenheit. That's like 104 Fahrenheit, which is really fucking hot. And hardly anywhere in Vancouver, hardly any homes have AC. Like, it's just not a thing because our weather is so mild. Well, it has been, you know. Now, due to global warming, we're all going to have to get AC, and we're just not equipped for these temperatures. I saw a meme. That said the temperatures across the Pacific Northwest were hotter than 99.98 or 98.98. Anyway, let's just say 98% of the world. 98% of the world. Yeah, so today's cooled down a bit, which is why I can record the podcast. Because any other day in the last few days, I was literally, my skin was dripping off me. Today is, what was it, Wednesday? Yeah, so it started on Friday. Saturday, because I've never seen temperatures like this before, and so in the week, I was like, oh, it's going to be like 37 at the weekend on Saturday. Let's go to the lake. And so me and Hector and his husband, Dr. Michael J. Park, we went to a lake, and the lake water was beautiful. But whenever we were out of the lake, it was like surface of the sun stuff. Walking to the lake from like us where we were sat, which was like 4 meters, walking on the sand, I have never felt sand like that. I feel like, have you seen those Oprah Winfrey, Tony Robbins things where they walk over the fire, they walk over the coals? I was, when I got into the lake, I was like, I have just done that. I just did the coal walk, but it was like sand that was so hot that it was almost going to turn into glass. Like, that's how hot the sand was. And on the way back, I was driving. My AC was struggling so much that it just blew hot air for the hour. The journey was an hour and 15, and so for an hour it blew hot air, and the last 15 minutes it kicked in. It was like, okay, I'm doing it. But we were just dying. We're like, let's just open the windows, just let that breeze in. I'm sure if we're on the highway, that breeze is going to be nice and cold. No, it was just like being in a wind tunnel, and the wind tunnel was just hair dryers. It was just bad. And then Sunday, I was like, okay, I'm going to get serious about this heat malarkey. I tarped over all of my windows, not a speck of light in my apartment. And I was like, come on, the heat's going to come down now. And the heat didn't come, the heat didn't come down at all. It didn't get any hotter, but it was so hot. And I had fans, but the fans, they were just blowing hot air on you. And that's not nice. So yeah, I sat in darkness, naked. Couldn't even like switch a light bulb on. When I put on a lamp or something, or went to the bathroom and turned the lights on, it would be like, oh god, the heat from the lamp, from the light bulb was too much. So yeah, so I made it my mission to trawl Craigslist for an AC, and actually people were putting up ads on Craigslist just saying, oh please, I'll buy your AC, I'll pay twice what it's worth, and people were getting into bidding wars, and I don't know how the fuck I managed to, but I managed to get an AC unit, and I only paid like a little bit more than what it was worth. It's just, I was just like, how is this happening? And the guy was like, he had a bunch of ACs, and he's like, I've got one left. Do you want it? And I was literally like, ah, yes. I was like, I could be there in 20 minutes. And like the whole time I was like, this is going to be a scam. This is going to be a joke. Like he's going to sell me like, I don't know, an ice tray and be like, here's an air conditioner. But it was real. It was real. And I only had to pay like $200 for it. And I installed it, and it was just, it could only cool down my bedroom, but at least I had somewhere to go into where I could cool down. And it's like this little, this one of the smallest size ACs there is. But I was like, I would take anything. I would take anything to get relief. So I just was like hugging the AC and kissing it and just being like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, it's so hot. Yeah. So that wasn't fun. And for the people who couldn't get AC, couldn't afford to get AC, don't have access to it, I managed to do 2 days of it, and I was sick. Like literally, like couldn't eat much. I could like eat a little bit, but then I would maybe feel sick because your body doesn't want to. Apparently, I was looking at it, I was like, why am I getting sick? And apparently your body, it doesn't happen to everyone, but your body's like, it creates heat to digest. And so let's do it as little as possible. So your body's like, no, you've had enough. And just feeling like loopy. And apparently that's how a lot of people die due to heat, is because they just feel disoriented, and that's what heat does, and then you'll die from overheating. So yay, I didn't die, so that's good. And now I'm the proud owner. I am very proud of an AC unit. And I was like, I'm never going to get AC. Like having one of those units hanging out the window, it looks so ugly, and I don't like it, and I would never do that. And if someone suggested getting one, I'm like, well, I don't need no AC. Now I'm like, I don't give a shit what it looks like. Yeah. I was admiring it when I walked Dougal this morning. And I sent Dougal away, actually. I sent Dougal away to my ex's, his dad's house, who has AC. So I was like, I'm really worried that he's very furry. He's a little dog, but he's got lots of fur, and he's got black hair. And I know we weren't outside, but, black, that gets the hottest with sun rays, but we were in darkness. So anyway, but now he's back. So I have my little doggy back. So in today's episode, I'll stop talking about fucking sun shit. But if you're watching the video and you think, oh, she looks a bit sweaty, then yes, that is why. I enjoy it, and normally I have kind of a red face anyway. Someone on a video was like, oh, I love that rouge that you're wearing, and I looked at the video, I was like, rouge? There was literally no rouge. My whole face was just red from sunburn. It was just like a different video. And I thought, do they think that I've painted my whole face red? Or were they just taking the piss or something? I don't know. And anyway, I just happen to be a red person, obviously, because my DNA is 95% potato. So Okay, so what this episode is, I'm going to answer a couple of questions from you. If you ever have a question that you want me to answer on the show, if you go to the show notes, which is fiercefatty.com/podcast, then there is a link for you to submit a question. Make sure that you submit a question that way, because it keeps everything together versus just DMing me or emailing me or whatever, because then you can get lost in the shuffle. Whereas with this, I can just go to your question and then it's there, and then I'll just, answer it. So there's a link there in the show notes if you want to ask a question. Go do that. So the first question is from Kelly. And Kelly says, I need some advice. At work, we often have information sessions regarding different topics to support us. Could be mental health, professional development, etc. Lately, there has been a lot of diet culture and fat phobia in these sessions, and I see red. I speak up and state things like, cookies are great, eating is great, etc. I threw in, can we stay away from diet culture and weight stigma? I used to stay quiet, but it pains me to think that there are people listening to this berating themselves for eating. Should I be standing up and saying anything? Should I stay quiet? Obviously, I understand that society has built this world where being fat is the worst thing someone can be, and definitely have compassion. But not when it's touted as self-care strategy, etc. As a self-care strategy. Example, not etc. Example, reduce your stress, but also berate yourself for eating a box of chocolates and go outside and walk it off. How do you not see red? Or do you? So that was from Kelly. Thanks for the question, Kelly. And your answer is, oh, I see red. I see violent, bloody red. And I want to do some roundhouse kicks to people's faces who do this bullshit. And then exactly what you say, I have compassion because, they don't know any better. But we are going to see this more and more as folks go back to work or back to the office, or workplaces want to, quote unquote, help people overcome the panini. And so the way that they do that, it would be like, oh, let's help you not be fat anymore because of the quarantine 15. Kill me now. And even if you're not seeing that at the workplace, if you turn on a television, then news stories are talking about this bullshit about, oh my god, everyone's put on so much weight and we're all gonna die. So it's really, really hard to avoid it. And so this rhetoric is going to be about even more than usual. Yay! Well, but we're kind of we've been used to seeing, well, it sucks. We've been used to seeing it in general, but then also when the panini started, used to that, like, don't get fat, oh my god, we're getting fat, and now it's kind of like, oh, let's fix it. So what do we do in this situation? So depending on your body size, you'll have varying amounts of privilege in these situations. And also depending on what type of personality you have, and depending on what is your, if you have anything else going on in your life, and how many spoons you have. And so spoons, it's a term to mean like how much mental energy or how much capacity you have to do something. I think it came from the disabled community to recognize that, we're not unlimited sources of labor constantly, and that extends to sometimes you just can't, because for whatever, a million different reasons. Something else that's really important to consider here is, as well, not only personality privilege, is all of the other privileges that I hold and other people hold. So it's going to be easier for someone like me, who is a white person, and being middle class and being able-bodied, etc., 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 to talk to people, right? Because I have privilege in the world. And so think about that when it comes to you choosing whether you want to take action against fat phobia at work. all of the different intersecting identities that you may or may not hold. All of those things will kind of dictate about how you deal with this. And so there's no kind of perfect answer for this. It all depends on what you can do. So let me tell you the different things that are options, and you can decide what might feel good for you. So what I would do, and again, like this depends. Like if I have a really like shit day or I don't have any spoons, then I might not be able to do this. But what I would do is I would go straight to the person doing these workshops or HR and just lay down the law. I'm going to say lay down the law. I'm not going to be like kicking in their door and being like, listen up here, motherfucker, you piece of shit. Like, I'll be nice about it, right? But, you know, I would tell them that this is fatphobic, or this is diet culture, and this is encouraging eating disorders, and that it's promoting shame, and shame is really bad for our health. And I would make a deal out of it because I'm a fat activist, right? And I feel very comfortable about talking about this stuff. I'm sure about this stuff. You know, there's no kind of like, if someone says, but what about fat people? They're so unhealthy. I have the knowledge in my brain to back up and be like, actually, studies show, blah, blah, blah. And so I have that privilege of, you know, I've educated myself around that. Also, I work for myself, and so I'm not reporting to a boss. And so it's easy for me to say, I'm going to march into their office and, you know, lay down the law. I'm not worried about getting fired by someone because I am my own boss. And my personality type is that I am able to have difficult conversations and can take risks. Like I'm a risk taker, and this is risky. You know, it's not as risky as standing in front of a bus, but it's still, there's risks, right? And so you can do that if you want to do that. If you're in the same type of personality and blah 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 as me, and you have that confidence, you can do that. And you don't have to do it in the same style. You don't have to go and talk to someone and confront them. But just like an FYI of you can do this, but also know that there might be consequences. And we have to think about the power dynamics at play. So some other things that you could do is, instead of talking to someone, you could write the person who's organizing these events a really cool email, which is like, oh, hey, I don't know if you knew, but when we say this and when we say that, these are the potential impacts of that. And I know that you would never want people to be walking away with that type of message, you know, talking about how it's harmful. Another thing you can do is to ask to get a consultant to do a lunch and learn about size diversity. Someone like me, I do this. I go into companies and I talk about size diversity, about weight stigma, about how to love your body. And so maybe they don't stop all the other bullshit, but why not encourage getting someone like me, and then I'll be the person who's calling out all the, you know, naming all of the fat phobia, and people will be like, oh shit, oh, I've been doing that. Another thing you can do is to talk with your other colleagues about how they feel about all of that diet culture stuff, and start a conversation. Now, it might not be safe for you to do that because everyone else might be like, yeah, I love it when I get body shamed, woo! You know, people might be like that, and if you already know that, then maybe having a conversation, I don't know, maybe it might start something, who knows? Another thing you can do is not do anything and then talk about this with a therapist. And just be like, listen, you know, I don't have the capacity to do anything for whatever reason, and this is really just fucking getting on my tits, and talk to a therapist about it. And another thing that you could do is not do anything and not talk to a therapist and just ruminate about it, because maybe accessing a therapist for whatever reason, that's not something you can do. And so none of these options are wrong or are the best, because, like I mentioned, not everyone has the capabilities, capacity, or desire to want to go and talk about this stuff. But if you have privilege and you're just like, whatever. Maybe, and you're not, and this is not like a topic that's really kind of hitting home for you because you're not living in a big body, then I would encourage you to see what you can do. And if you have a personality where you can have conversations and things like that, I would really encourage it, because that is like activism right there and then. And it doesn't have to be, like I said, it doesn't have to be, right, listen up here, motherfuckers, I'm going to murder you with my fat statistics. And just an FYI, it is not okay that this is happening in the workplace. It is not okay. This is not acceptable. This is fat phobia, diet culture. It is bigotry in the workplace. And that is bullshit. That is not okay. There's no debate about, is it okay to, talk about diets and shit like that? No, it is violence. It is anti-fat violence. It is not okay ever, full stop, end of story. So in line with this, I want to share my jab technique. And so my jab technique is something that I created. I don't know if I've ever shared it with you before, but things like this is not going to be a one and done type of thing. So Kelly in their comments said, I've said, can we stay away from this? And cookies are great and eating is great and all that type of stuff. And notice how Kelly is, trying to set boundaries there, but it sounds like it's not really sticking. And so when we want to have our boundaries enforced, I like to talk about the jab technique that I created so that we can have a system to go about this. And so JAB is an acronym. It stands for Judge, Action, Brace, and Bottom Line. JABB. Judge, Action, Brace, Bottom Line. So J, it stands for judge. And so you were going to judge the situation. You were going to assess whether you are safe to set a boundary. You're going to look at the power dynamics. So is it safe for you to do so? Like if you are going to be approaching a boss who is a complete arsehole, and you know that they're a raging fatphobe, and you know that they could fire you at any moment, and they're that type of person, it might not be safe for you to do so. And in that case, it might be better to take another action. So another action could be not doing anything and protecting yourself, and seeing what you can do to avoid those situations. Like maybe can you get another job, right? So maybe setting in a boundary in that situation is not the best thing because it might not be safe. So J is for judge. A is for action. And so if you've decided, okay, I do want to set a boundary, I want to speak up, and this is what I want to do, you have to do it, right? And you have to be very clear versus being a bit wishy-washy about it. And so you need to set the boundary. And if you are not normally a boundary setter, it's going to be scary as shit. Before I set boundaries, I imagined that I would say, oh, hey, do you think that maybe you could do this, maybe, don't worry if you can't, but maybe can you not call me a bitch, maybe? And I would imagine that the person would be like, what? What the fuck? How dare you ask for me to not call you a bitch? I'll do whatever the fuck I want, I would imagine that they would just be like this monster. And that is because of previous trauma and bad experiences with people. But generally speaking, most people are, well balanced, as long as you're kind of going in there and trying to word it in a way which is easier to hear, and you're never responsible for someone's reaction, but if you're like, hey, you're a piece of shit and I hate you and blah blah blah, then they might have a negative reaction, obviously. But if you're like, hey, I'm curious, this is the line to use, I'm curious whether you could help me with something, and they'll say yes, and you'd say, I'm learning to love and accept my fat body. I'm learning to unravel all of the unhelpful beliefs from diet culture. I'm blah, blah, blah. And something that really helps me is avoiding fatphobic things, or avoiding saying this and that, is la 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 la. And so do you think you can help me make that a reality in the workplace? or, and so they're probably going to say, oh yeah, cool, yeah, no problem. Okay, great. So do you think that we can maybe get a consultant in that talks about, do a lunch and learn on this? Or do you think that we can maybe, when we're talking about health, we talk about things like mental health, and we talk about how shame is really impactful on our health, and how fat phobia exists and all that type of stuff. And so you have to kind of be very clear. No wishy-washy, kind of off the cuff type thing. So sometimes that might work, if you're just like, oh, this is so boring, like, why are you talking about this? That might work. But I am all for being as clear as possible when we can with our communication. And it's not always possible. You're not going to be the best human being all of the time. Next is brace. So B, brace. Brace for, chances are they're going to break the boundary, right? They're going to do it accidentally. So if you have, say if all of your life you've dieted, and you've asked your mum not to talk about dieting, and you've known your mum since around about the time you were born, for example, and your mum the next time you see you says, oh, have you seen this new diet? And it might not be because your mum is an evil witch and just wants to make you upset. Maybe your mum is an evil witch, but maybe also your mum is just so used to talking about this stuff. And so when you brace, it's like you're getting ready, because they probably, there's a chance that they are going to forget about that conversation or not take you seriously. And so then that is when you reinforce the boundary. And so you say, oh yeah, hey, you remember when blah, 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 we talked about this? And they'll probably go, oh yeah, shit, I'm so sorry. And you say, okay, yeah, no big deal. Let's just carry on with our day. And so in your workplace, if you can go back to HR and be like, oh, hey, you remember when we talked about that? Oh yeah, I totally forgot, whatever. And then the final one is B, is bottom line. And so we can't control people. I know, it's so fucking annoying. It's so rude that we can't just force people to do what we want them to do. And so we can't control people. And so they could just be like, no, fuck off. I hate you. I am not going to do anything that you want me to do because I am a horrible human being, or for whatever reason. Like, they could just be like, do you know what? Actually, I just love dieting and I think it's great for people and I want to talk about dieting. Okay, all right. They can do that. And so then you will think about what is your bottom line, and then decide what you're going to do. So decide if they are reacting, if that's okay, or if you're going to remove yourself from the situation, or if you're going to protect yourself, or if you are going to reduce the amount of contact you have with that. What can you do to enforce that boundary and have a bottom line so that you're taken seriously, even like for yourself, you say, I've got this new standard and I'm sticking to it. Like I will not put up with bigotry being, my brain is really important for me and I want to make sure that the workplace I'm in is safe for me. And so what is your bottom line? And again, it might not be possible for you to be like, see you later, losers, I'm getting a new job. Like for many reasons that might not be possible, but maybe that is something that you might want to look to do. Can I begin to work towards getting a new job? Or can I do things to protect myself? Like for whatever reason, you might have to be exposed to these harmful things. And so, say if you know that there's going to be a lunch and learn, can you not go? Imagine, like, say if you were forced to go for whatever reason, then maybe that evening, can you engage in some type of self-care to look after yourself? So in answer to that question from Kelly, it's kind of like there's not one answer. There's lots of different things about, you can do. But I want you to know that it's not okay. This is not okay. You're not overreacting by thinking that this is a problem, because it is a problem. It is a massive problem. It's not okay. And you deserve to work somewhere that is safe and that is free from being further marginalized if you live in a marginalized body. Free from diet culture and fat phobia, which is harmful to everyone in every body size. Okay, so next question. is from Christina. Christina, short and sweet. How to differentiate low self-esteem from a mental health condition. How to differentiate, so this is a question, how to differentiate low self-esteem from a mental health condition. So before I answer this question, I want to, FYI, in case you're not aware, I'm not a therapist or a psychologist, so please keep that in mind. I'm not going to be able to give you an answer from a trained professional's point of view. So here I'm not going to be saying, okay, well, this is a mental health condition, this is not a mental health condition, because I'm not a psychologist, a therapist, any of those things. I have no capacity to be able to say that or, comment on that because I'm not a mental health professional. And so I'm not going to be saying, oh, yes, definitely, this sounds like a mental health condition. This sounds, because, that's just, no. I'm not going to be doing that. But I'm going to be talking about... should we be taking things, I don't want to say seriously, but, is this important? How important is it? How bad is something? And is it normal to be feeling these certain things and going through these type of things? And talking about when I had undiagnosed binge eating disorder, what that looked like for me versus when it was less kind of full blown and more your bog standard disordered eating, and what that looked like for me. And so again, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not diagnosing, saying this is what I've decided you have this or you have that. Like, no. Not me. But I do have a lot of thoughts about this. I got thoughts. And so, because, I talk about how can you differentiate between if you have disordered eating or an eating disorder. And this is not an eating disorder thing, it's low self-esteem, but the general gist of it is pretty much the same. So my sister is a social worker in Ireland, and she works with substances, so people who are using substances. And we often talk about how someone can use substances and it's actually not a problem. And so lots of people drink and people take drugs and things like that, and it's not a problem for them. They do it recreationally, and it's just a part of their life. It's not a problem. And so when does it become a problem? So when does someone have alcoholism or whatever? Well, it's when it negatively impacts their life. So it's all about the impact that whatever behavior is having. Will tell you how much of an impact it is having, and how serious it might be. But all ranges of things that are going on in your life that are distressing, they're all something that is worthy of being looked after, right? So and so an example of this is say for example, someone in Ireland is found to use cannabis for their mental health. And say that person has kids. So someone uses cannabis, they have kids, and someone reports them to the police or whatever, because it's illegal in Ireland to use cannabis. And so say they're referred to my sister. But in lots of places, in Vancouver, example, and I think in lots of places in the States, it's totally legal. And doctors prescribe cannabis, and it's used medicinally, it's used recreationally, and it's all fine, right? And so he has, imagine a guy, a woman, whoever this parent is, has anxiety, and they've tried lots of different things, and they found that cannabis works. And they've been referred to my sister to make them stop using cannabis, because if they don't, they're going to lose their kids, because they would be seen as a bad person. Well, in that case, like, is that a problem? Like, being referred and being called a problem is a problem. But if that person is happy and it's providing them, helping their mental health, and they're able to do the things that they need to do as a human being, then is that a problem? Well, the answer is no. And you know, yeah, someone could be in denial and be like, oh yeah, you know, I drink loads and loads, and I don't, it's ruined my life, but I'm fine, you know. But you know, I'm not talking about that type of thing. So I'm just using that as an example of how to think about this. And it goes for anything in our lives. So when is something a problem? And how much of a problem is it? And how much does it impact our lives? How distressing is it? So it makes me think about, I'm going to be talking about binge eating disorder now for the next maybe 2 minutes. If you don't want to hear about binge eating disorder, then just skip ahead a couple of minutes. So it makes me think about, like, when I had binge eating disorder undiagnosed, my life revolved around food. So I just remember so clearly waking up in the morning, and you're like, oh, you know, when you wake, your alarm goes off, and you're like, oh, it's morning time, and whatever it is you're thinking about. My first thought would always be food. My first thought would be like, yes, I'm allowed to eat breakfast now. Thank God, you know. Oh, I can eat breakfast. And all day long, I would be thinking about eating food or not eating food, and how to sneak food, and how to restrict food, and it was my whole life. It consumed everything about me. You know, it was like probably like 90% of my thoughts were to do with food, and the rest were other things. You know, like living. So at the time, I wasn't diagnosed with binge eating disorder because I wasn't seeing a mental health professional. But now I've done this work, I can clearly see how distressing that time was for me, and how much it impacted my life, versus when I began to recover. And when I began to recover, I still thought of food a lot, and I still had disordered thoughts, but it wasn't as much. It eased. And the reason why I talk about this is a lot of the solution for when it was a full-blown eating disorder was a lot, you know, the solution was tied in a lot with when it was just disordered eating. And I say just, like, in quotation marks. Disordered eating is still not, you know, a fun thing. And the solution for these both things was unlearning fatphobia, going to therapy, recovering from trauma, unlearning diet culture. And so the difference between the two is how urgent it was for me to get help. And so it was more urgent when I was in a more distressing state. I didn't have the money to go to therapy, and, you know, it just worked out that I naturally was able to recover. But even if I didn't have binge eating disorder and I was just disordered around food, that doesn't mean that I didn't deserve also to have support and help. And so something else to consider is that to keep in mind that a lot of mental health professionals are moving away from diagnosing people, as sometimes it's not helpful to have that label. Sometimes it is helpful. And sometimes someone who is a therapist versus a psychologist, depending on where you are in the world, but some people can't actually diagnose someone. They can say you have the symptoms of this condition, but they can't legally diagnose someone. And so, you know, I think it's falling out of fashion to want to give lots of people labels and make them feel like there might be something wrong with them, when a lot of this stuff is very common and natural behaviors for, you know, to recover, to you know, if you've experienced certain things, and it's you know, of course you're going to have trauma around things and have some type of coping mechanism. Also, I wonder why you want to differentiate between low self-esteem and a mental health condition. Like, what is the reason? It could be you're just curious, you know. Is it because that if you have a label for how you're feeling, then it's valid? And if you don't have a label, like if you don't fall into the, you know, the criteria of having a mental health condition, then it's not as valid in your mind. Both are valid. Or maybe do you think that you want to know if it's bad enough that you should take action? Like, is it, if I have a diagnosable mental health condition, then I should go to see a therapist, but if I'm just feeling really, 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 really shit, then I shouldn't? Is that what you're thinking? I mean, if you can go to a therapist, you should go. If you just feel bad for whatever reason, you should go and see a therapist, and even if you're not feeling bad. So I know for me, I did actually need that label of complex PTSD to prove to myself that I went through something really bad, and to say that how I felt was real versus I was just making it up all up in my head, and that I was right to feel the way that I did because I had a quote unquote excuse. You know, I was sick versus, oh, you're just being silly, sort of thing. And so my therapist couldn't say you are diagnosed with complex PTSD. She could only say you have you had all the symptoms of it. And something like PTSD, it's not black and white, right? It's not like you have it or you don't. It's not like you can take a test or, you know, someone can draw some blood from you and be like, yep, PTSD positive, or whatever condition positive to do with mental health. It's not black and white. It's kind of shades of grey, and it's a spectrum. And so someone could have experienced the same trauma as me and not had the same result, and not have had PTSD. Whereas others might experience trauma that we would presume is less impactful, and it can be really, really impactful for them. And so it's all on a scale, and you can be experiencing, you know, a little bit of trauma or a lot of trauma, and that goes for any mental health condition. You know, not everyone is the same with how they experience it. And so low self-esteem and a mental health condition, they are both to do with mental health, right? And low self-esteem may be part of a mental health condition. It might be one of the things that is part of a mental health condition. And both are valid, and both can be distressing. And both deserve to be supported. It's like, how far on a spectrum of feeling like it's impacting your day-to-day life? And if it's really badly affecting your day-to-day life, then maybe something else is at play aside from the trauma of living in diet culture and fat phobia. So there's something here that, you know, could be related to low self-esteem, and so I wanted just to talk about it because I find it interesting. So there's something called body dysmorphic disorder. You might recognize it as being called body dysmorphia. So let me just read a little bit from Wikipedia about what it is, in case you're not familiar or if you would like to know more. So body dysmorphic disorder, BDD, occasionally still called dysmorphophobia, is a mental disorder characterized by the obsessive idea that some aspect of one's own body part or appearance is severely flawed and therefore warrants exceptional measures to hide or fix it. In BDD's delusional variant, the flaw is imagined. If the flaw is actual, its importance is severely exaggerated. Either way, thoughts about it are pervasive and intrusive and may occupy several hours a day, causing severe distress and impairing one's otherwise normal activities. BDD is classified as a somatoform disorder, a somatoform, just in sideway, a somatic symptom disorder, is any mental disorder that manifests as physical symptoms that suggest illness or injury but cannot be explained fully by general medical condition or by the direct effect of substance and are not attributable to another mental disorder. Anyway, so it's classified as that. And the DSM-5 categorizes BDD in the obsessive-compulsive spectrum and distinguishes it from anorexia nervosa. BDD is estimated to affect from 0.7% to 2.4% of the population. It usually starts during adolescence and affects both men and women. No information on any other genders there. The BDD subtype muscle dysmorphia, perceiving the body as too small, affects mostly males, men. Besides thinking about it, one repetitively checks and compares the perceived flaw and can adopt unusual routines to avoid social contact that exposes it. Fearing the stigma of vanity, one usually hides the preoccupation. Commonly unsuspected even by psychiatrists, BDD has been underdiagnosed. Severely impairing quality of life via educational and occupational dysfunction and social isolation, BDD has high rates of suicidal thoughts and attempts at suicide. So can you see how, with me reading that, a lot of that stuff is stuff that we would experience if you have low self-esteem. So maybe not to this extent. So avoiding, social isolation, checking your body, perceived flaws, that type of stuff, intrusive thoughts. And so you could have those things and have low self-esteem, but it could be, you have to kind of think about like to what extent. And so in here it's saying, it could be, be thinking about it several hours a day. And so I think it's quite normal for most people, especially because we live in a society that values appearance, to think about what our body looks like and to not be able to perceive what our body actually looks like. How, some people might say, oh, you look gorgeous. And you're like, LOL, no, I don't. They're just saying that. A lot of the times, if your partner says you look good looking and you're thinking they're lying, they're not true, their eyes are broken or whatever. And so that could be body dysmorphic disorder, depending on how distressing it is to you. So how much it affects your life. So if you're thinking, if this consumes your life, then it could be something that, it could be that it's this mental health condition. And it's kind of, again, it's a spectrum. And so why is it that we need that kind of, is it that we need that validation to say what you're going through is difficult and hard and it's valid? No matter what, if you are distressed about something, it's difficult and valid, full stop. And, maybe having a diagnosis is comforting, like it was to me when I got my, confirmation that I had PTSD symptoms. So I'm just curious, there's no, you're not wrong for wanting to have a label. I wanted a label, but it's kind of interesting. It's interesting, right, how sometimes it's not helpful. And if sometimes people, they don't want that. They don't want to say, I have something which, it's written about in a book, and people say it's bad, So something about this as well that I found very interesting is this bit. Published in 1994, DSM-4 defines BDD as a preoccupation with an imagined or trivial defect in appearance, a preoccupation causing social or occupational dysfunction, and not better explained as another disorder such as anorexia nervosa. Published in 2013, the DSM-5 shifts BBD to a new category, obsessive compulsive spectrum, adds operational criteria such as repetitive behaviors or intrusive thoughts, and notes the subtype muscle dysmorphia, preoccupation that one's body is too small or insufficiently muscular or lean. So what I found interesting about that is this line here. Defines BDD as a preoccupation with an imagined or trivial defect in appearance. So that idea, imagined or trivial. So if someone is, it makes me think about anorexia. So, anorexia, when we think about anorexia, we think about people who are thin, right? But most anorexia is in people who are not thin. But people don't get their diagnosis because they are fat. And so, well, you can't be anorexic because you're fat. And it's classified as atypical anorexia. And it is basically anorexic, but you're not thin, which is ridiculous. No other mental health condition has a weight limit on there. So it's kind of like similar to the anorexia thing, is that you get the diagnosis if your body is normative. And so if you are a thin person and you lose weight, then that's a problem. If you have, all the other things, behaviors that associated with anorexia. If you are a fat person and you have exactly the same, you don't often get that diagnosis of anorexia because you have a bigger body. And I wonder if a fat person was really obsessed about their quote-unquote flaw of their fat, that would just be seen as something good and seen as something healthy because society views it as a flaw. And so, this imagined flaw, this, society decides what a flaw is. And so therefore, if society says being fat is a flaw, someone could have BDD, but people are encouraging it. Same with anorexia. Well, if you're fat, then who fucking cares? Because, it means that you're not eating food, and that's good for everybody. And, if you're obsessed about your body is too fat, and you could have a fat body and you could be imagining it to be bigger than it is, or you could just be imagining that fatness is this really, really awful, awful thing. And I wonder how many times, people are like, well, don't get too obsessed, but kind of keep obsessing, obsess a good amount, obsess enough so that you become thin, And so I found that really interesting of like, well, what is a flaw? And how often will it not be, diagnosed? And here they say, it's underdiagnosed. And I bet you it's way underdiagnosed in fat people. And by the way, in here in the Wikipedia page, it says the treatment is medication and therapy, and then self-improvement. So for many people with BDD, cosmetic surgery does not work to alleviate the symptoms of BDD, as their opinion of their appearance is not grounded in reality. It's recommended that cosmetic surgeons and psychiatrists work together in order to screen surgery patients to see if they suffer from BDD. As a result of surgery, could be harmful for them. And it says with medication, antidepressant medication, cognitive behavioral therapy are considered effective. So and so those things too. So imagine like with therapy, you can do therapy, you've got your antidepressant, and also you're not learning about how fat phobia and diet culture plays a role in the way that we think we need to look. How that could also, we might be missing that thing too. Like a lot of people, like I did, I went to therapy and for a long time, and was like, I just don't like my body, and my kind of the outcome of that was I just need to keep trying hard to get thin, versus I need to unlearn fat phobia, because the therapist didn't understand about fat phobia. They were fat phobic. They were in diet culture, right? And so, when I came to the conclusion of, I think I just need to try harder, then they weren't like, let's explore that more. I can't remember if they were like, good idea, Victoria, but maybe I was challenged. I can't remember, but I don't remember ever, I came to the Fatphobia conclusion myself from social media. Thank fuck for social media. So in summary of all of that, my guess is to, no matter what, if you have a mental health condition, if you have low self-esteem, is to throw support at yourself if you can, and to unlearn fat phobia, and to understand diet culture. And is that enough? Is that enough for you? And learning this stuff could be enough. Or you might need to see if you can get into therapy, or you might need to see if you can get medication. I don't think there is a kind of one thing fits all, right? And kind of exploring what works for you, and learning. Luckily, I was able to get out of my binge eating disorder just by getting out of an abusive relationship and allowing myself to eat food. Now, I was still deeply disordered around food, but it wasn't to the point where I was thinking about it 23 hours a day, So what impact is it having on you? Either way, it's valid. If you're in distress, then you're in distress. And if you need a label, then that's valid too. I did. And if you don't want a label, then that's valid as well. So, okay, I hope this was helpful. Thank you for hanging out with me today. And I will see you in the next episode. I'm going to go and sit in my air conditioning bedroom for a while and sweat. All right. Have an amazing day. See you later. Thanks for listening to the episode. And if you feel ready to get serious about this work and want to know when the doors open to Fierce Fatty Academy, which is my signature program where I teach all about how to overcome your fat phobic beliefs and learn to love your fat body, then go to fiercefatty.com/waitlist. Again, that is fiercefatty.com/waitlist to get your name on the waitlist for when Fierce Fatty Academy, my signature program, opens.